Hey, Brian.
Brian Christopherson.
I gotta take this. It's Hap.
B-Rye, B-Rooney, drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry.
Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7 on the Connor Happer Show on 1620, The Zone.
All right, we're joined on the 42 Degrees of Source hotline by Brian Christopherson of Husker 247. BC, hello. How are you?
Good. I was just thinking about this when I was talking before coming on air. Do you introduce yourself as Connor from the Zone? Just the people on the street. You should do that. Kind of a power move.
No, I don't think I do. I just say I'm Connor usually. Keep a low profile. Yeah. Sometimes they notice though. You never know. But I could be Connor from so many different places. That's the other thing. It could be disorienting.
You do wear a lot of ball caps. That's correct.
Yeah. Speaking of wearing a lot of ball caps, are you are you in Stillwater right now?
No, I'm not. Blowing that cover. I am going to go Sunday as long as the boys are still cooking there.
Okay.
That's my plan for the weekend. So it's going to be an early wake up call Sunday. But yeah, I'll be watching it like everybody else today, and I'm kind of fired up for the game today.
I am too. I kind of got college baseball fever right now. I got all these different games going on right now. So, but that's good. You get a little Big 12 flavor. Maybe it'll remind you of some road trips of the past. Any of your favorite stops that you're looking forward to making on Highway 81 through Kansas?
I don't remember the route very well. I remember that was one of Bo Pelini's best wins.
Yes.
It might have been the only game I actually honestly covered at Oklahoma State was 2010. And it gets forgotten because people were so PO'd because they lost to Texas.
Yep.
The week before in the Red Out Around the World game or whatever. And, then they beat Justin Blackman and a pretty good Okie State team in a shootout. And, it was when you look back at it, one of the better Husker wins in the Pelini era.
They couldn't score. You're so right though, because they couldn't score any points against Texas, and Taylor was hurt. And then I think it was 51-41 in the Okie State game, and it's like it's one of Bo's best wins, but it's completely like they had to get out of the negative just by winning that game because of what had happened the previous week and how that loss still to this day scars people, I think.
Yeah, it does. Team Magic had a great game. It was funny. Twitter was kind of not new, but it was still not, it's a few years old. But I do remember still people were griping throughout that whole Nebraska-Oklahoma State game because Okie State was scoring a lot. And it ended up being one of the best wins. And people are still ticked off about what had happened the week before. Yeah. And how we would love to go back to those days of those kind of games and that kind of record. So it's interesting how things happen.
As the schedule was released yesterday, it's another. It feels like Nebraska is kind of joining the Big Ten again, almost. The conference has sort of changed a little bit. New television networks and a whole bunch of kickoff times came out yesterday. There's new opponents, obviously, on the schedule. What are one or two things that kind of stand out to you about the information that we now have about Nebraska's slate for 2024?
They got great TV windows. I know we want to always complain about stuff, and I understand the Friday night debate. It's sort of out of Nebraska's hands. And, when you're getting that kind of paycheck, obviously, sometimes you're going to nod your head to something that maybe wouldn't be your favorite, but you're still going to do it. But when you look at how it sets up with a 2:30 opener on Fox, so you got a kind of a premium spot there for the game it is. And then you get 3 primetime games in a row and an opportunity. Yeah, people might not love the Friday night deal against Illinois, but it's a 400 sellout. You kind of separate from the Saturday crowd on that one. I expect it's going to be a pretty great atmosphere when we actually get to it. So I think Husker fans should like how it's set up so far. You've got 2 primetime games on NBC. Now you've got to, go and perform in those type of settings and show you're the type of team that's not going to have egg on your face with everyone watching. And that's sort of the next step. But I don't think you could ask for anything more, honestly.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll be a regular occurrence, Nebraska getting Friday home games. But I do envision it, Brian, as being one of those things where, there will be some hand-wringing and consternation about it all summer and even into the season. But after it happens, maybe there will be this sort of embrace of it, and even people saying, you know what, I could deal with, at the very least, I could deal with that once every 3 years or every 2 years or something like that. And at the most, maybe people will sort of enjoy it. Like you said, it's the 400th consecutive sellout. It brings energy to a game that probably wouldn't have had energy to it in normal circumstances. I imagine the thought process on it after it happens will be a lot different than the way we're talking about it right now.
It's the same thing. I mean, everybody always gripes about the Thursday night NFL games and how crappy they are and, all the short rest, and they still do numbers, right? Yeah. I mean, it's still like, it's football and people love it. And I can't be a hypocrite on this one. When Nebraska's on the road playing a Saturday game and it's like Bruns and I, are out somewhere in that college town, I'm always asking them when we get there, it's like, who's the Friday night game tonight? Like, is there a good one? Like, and we're planning like our evening around like getting to a spot if it's like USC versus somebody to watch it. And so, while I understand the high school situation, and I have always sort of defended that, I also realize in this climate in college sports, it's just going to be the way it is now. And so you kind of have to accept that, every couple of years, there's probably going to be a home game in Lincoln on one of those nights. You do it once a year, and you figure out how to make it the best you can logistically. And, you make the most of it, and you make it a good home atmosphere, and ideally win the game. And then everybody kind of stops kibitzing about it if you win.
Brian, let's go to Black Friday here, because the conference, one thing that's become clear to me is the conference really is trying to mark their territory on that day. They've moved Minnesota, Wisconsin to the morning kickoff on that day. Nebraska and Iowa is going to be late. They're not going up against the NFL game that's going in the midday that day. Somebody asked us the question, like, this is probably a topic that we at least dip our toe in every year. Where do you think Nebraska and Iowa sort of ranks on the scale of rivalry games in the conference? One thing that's been very clear to me over the last several years is that the conference and its television partners hold that game in pretty high regard. And so I think it's kind of, while the night game is sort of different, it brings it once again a different energy to it. But I think that's the main takeaway, that they're willing to make Nebraska and Iowa, a big show in primetime on that day.
There's also people who, of a certain age, who, when they think about like Thanksgiving football, Nebraska's a part of that. They're part of the fabric there, because Nebraska's played like on Black Friday more than anybody. If you go back to, it started with Oklahoma in 1990 was the first year where it became like the annual tradition it's become. So since 1990, that's been Nebraska on that day. And I do happen to think there's people that are powerful people that still, they get the warm and fuzzies a little bit about that. There's a lot of other games to choose from, but Nebraska, sort of like some other teams that are associated in the NFL with Thanksgiving weekend, is kind of linked to that. And so it makes sense that you would try to prioritize a good time for them. And I do think, to your point, there's an understanding that Nebraska, Iowa is probably a sneaky good rivalry that even the fan bases sometimes don't want to admit to, but it means a lot to them to beat the other side in that game. Mm-hmm. And Iowa's been pretty solid lately. I think there is probably, and I think you're seeing this by where they're scheduling Nebraska. There's a thought under Matt Rule that, hey, this program might take that step, and they got an exciting quarterback and all that. All that stuff factors into these thoughts, and so I think it's a cool change up that they're playing that game at 6:30. Although I do think I was tough at night at home. That becomes a tough barn to win in. And so, that the challenge competitively might have gone up, but I still like it.
How do you like Nebraska baseball's chances this weekend? You got a chance to sit at the ballpark all last week as they came through. You were, by the way, also sitting next to me when my brain was going through the Brocket Man thing on Sunday.
Yeah,
so
that was good.
We got through that. We might be seeing some more Brocket Man this weekend. What do you think of Nebraska's chances to escape the weekend?
I probably wouldn't pick them to get through the weekend, but they're playing with a lot of confidence. I do think Florida's a tough draw just because I always think a team like that, even if they've had a down year, they're loaded with talent. What scares me about Florida is the 116 home runs. If you give them free passes, that's going to be the real key. Don't give them those. And so if they hit a couple bombs on you, make them be 1 or 2 run homers. They can't be a bases clearing deal. And so that's going to be the biggest part. I think like half the press conference yesterday in Stillwater was sort of spent on that subject and Brett Sears like really dialed in like, yeah, they might hit a solo shot, but if it's a shot, make it solo. So that's going to be the big key. And then you just hope like the guys just have that same aggressive approach they've had at the plate. Gabe Swanson's really confident right now. Josh Caron, obviously. I think Sanderson's going to be big. This is a team that I think feels really good about itself. So they've got the good biorhythms going into it. So you hope that counts for something.
I agree. Brian Christopherson of Husker 247. BC, thanks as always for joining. Have a good weekend.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Brian Christopherson of Husker 247. There is something to, I really believe this. I mean, what do we always talk about in tournament time? Who gets hot and win, right? Matchups. Yes, matchups. But who gets hot and win?
Play.
Who's playing well? Who feels good about themselves? Unfortunately, there's no guards in baseball. Security guards is all they have in baseball. So, I mean, and now if they lose this weekend, or if they go 2-Q this weekend, you'll be like, well, I mean, so much for that. But I think if they find a way to make a regional final this weekend, they're one of the last 2 teams standing in Stillwater. You'll probably be like, man, running back all the way through that Big Ten tournament gave them a lot of juice. Mm-hmm. And I do think, we'll talk about this in a minute here, but it's really paramount that they win the game today.
Get off to a good start
with
your best, and let the chips fall where they may the rest of the weekend.
Exactly.
I don't know how you want to do score updates.
Well, we have a lot of them.
Situation brewing very early.
What's our situation, Josh?
Wofford has a 2-0 lead on LSU in the third.
Okay. It's just brewing. Yeah. The ingredients are on the table.
Well, something brewing.
They haven't even thrown them in the pot yet.
Sure.
But there's an interesting ingredient in there, Josh.
Long way to go. A lot of weekend left, but
also of local note, I suppose. Coastal Carolina, who's already previously made a visit to Omaha this year.
Whoa.
5-0.
Sorry, I thought my mic was off.
Leading against Vanderbilt in the bottom of the second in the Clemson Regional.
The Whistler losing.
The Whistler is probably still whistling, for being honest. But
and remember,
we can't hear them.
Whistlers.
Is there multiple? Did we figure that out last year?
I believe that was the report, yes.
It's not good. Jobin writes in, check Florida's home ballpark specs. Really shallow left center and right center field now. Hey, look, you're probably right. But I just remember that team and it's a different team. They had several guys that were drafted very high in the draft, including Wyatt Langford, who's already in the big leagues. But the one takeaway that I had of Florida if there was one, the takeaway that I had of Florida last year was just being in that dugout and seeing the physical monsters that they had. I mean, they had some big dudes. So I have no doubt that it's going to play in whichever ballpark they play in, but obviously it helps when you're in a little tiny baby stadium.
330 to left and right.
What about in the gaps? That's what Jobin was wondering about.
380.
That's what it says. Maybe it's a liar.
Right.
Who knows? All right. Quick timeout. Josh will bring you the odd news. When we come back, of course, we'll check in on college baseball scores as we go on throughout the day today. And we also want to hear from you. Don't forget, send us a call or text 402-951-1620. Tweet at Happer Show, at Connor Happer on the J-Tech Construction Zone Twitter feed. Back with more on a Friday on 1620 The Zone.
For the Jays, the Huskers, and even you Jayskers, we are 1620 The Zone.